لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد. ما اتصلت العيون بالنظر وتزخرفت الأرضون بالمطر وحج حاج واعتمر ولبى وحلق ونحر وطاف بالبيت العتيق وقبل الحجر والآل وصحبه وسلم. Alhamdulillah. So we're going to continue just looking at some of these meanings and etiquettes of the Hajj. We left off last time talking about the journey to the Hajj. Now we're going to ask, how do we approach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? In what state do we come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What state do we come to His haram? In what state do we come to enter His sanctuary? And we come in the state of ihram, of course. We enter the state of sanctity. And that's what we have to be in order to perform the Hajj and the Umrah. So when we think of ihram, we think of the clothing, but the reality of ihram is the intention, is that you're intending to approach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're intending to embark on the Hajj and the Umrah. So you can have you could be dressed like a muhrim, but if there's no intention, then you're not essentially in ihram. And obviously it will depend on your situation where you're going to enter the state of ihram. We may be flying in, and it's a case of being told now we're kind of crossing the miqat, this is the time to make ihram. Or you may have more time, and you may be travelling by land. You may be travelling from Medina, and the Prophet ﷺ made his ihram at a place just outside Medina, Dhul Hulayfa, which is the best place to make your ihram, because he made it there sallallahu alaihi wasallam on the way to Mecca from Medina. But obviously it may not be it's not necessarily in your control where you do it, but there's etiquettes and there's meanings associated to the ihram. First of all, you prepare for the ihram just as you prepare for, say, Jum'ah. You trim your nails, you trim the body hair, you beautify yourself, you put on perfume in preparation for that. You make ghusl as well. It's a sunnah to make ghusl just as it is for Jum'ah and so on. You make your ghusl. Again, this may be difficult if you're in mid-air, so you'd make it if you're traveling, if you're flying, then you'd make it at home before you put the ihram on, so at least you're in that state. And it's good to intend also the ghusl of entering Mecca, because again you may not have time, you may not have the opportunity to stop before entering Mecca to make that ghusl. It's sunnah to do that, which we'll mention in the next coming up. But so you make that ghusl, and when you do that, you're conscious that you're cleansing yourself. You're cleansing your heart, which is where Allah's gaze is upon. Allah's gaze is upon the heart, and your heart should be present. The fact that even before that you're taking off your clothes, you're taking off your normal clothes which you wear, which are a symbol of your identity, which distinguish you from anyone else. But you're taking that off and you're removing that thing which distinguishes you from everyone else, and you're getting rid of your worldly attachments and your worldly considerations. You're just coming to Allah with nothing, essentially. And also this is you making yourself the same as every other Muslim. There's nothing to identify you in relation to your fellow Muslim. So you see yourself as being equal, or even better, you see yourself as being lower. That's the etiquette they mentioned, being lower than every other Muslim. You see yourself as being the worst person, the most needy of Allah's mercy, the most needy of Allah's forgiveness. And Allah loves this. Allah describes the believers as being أَذِلَّةٍ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, that believers are humble in their dealings with each other. They see themselves, they lower themselves to each other. And Allah loves to see that from His servants. So you get rid of your caprice, your love of this world, your love of position, all those things. You're washing all that away, and you're preparing to come to Allah. And also you remember the fact that the day will come when your garments will be taken off you. It won't be at your hands. Someone else, you'll be on your you'll have passed away, and someone will be removing your clothing from you, and you have no say in this. So remember that the death. And a lot of the rituals of Hajj remind us of the akhirah and of death and of passing into the next world. So you'll be a lifeless corpse lying there, unable to raise your arm. All your clothes will be divested from you. and you'll be wrapped in your shroud, and that is the ihram, one of the symbols of the ihram. Also, there will be gathered again, just as you'll be, when you remember taking off the clothing, you'll be also, we'll all be assembled on Yawm al-Qiyamah, naked, barefoot, standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are things to think about. And also, Arafah in a sense is that it resembles the assembly, it resembles that standing, the Qiyamah. So then you're having made your ghusl, you put on the ihram, and remembering that this is like your burial shroud, this is like your kafan, you're putting it on. This is how you're coming to Allah. You're moving your ego, removing your attachments. You're just coming in this plain white cloth, coming to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is very good for the nafs, because you're breaking a habit. One of the best things in dealing with the nafs is breaking the things which it likes and it tends to, it is attached to. So worldly attachments, clothing, these kind of things. You're breaking that habit, finding it, and it finds it uncomfortable. But that's good for your nafs, just as is the remembrance of death. These two things, breaking the habits and remembering death, they're very beneficial in training and refining your lower self. And then, so when now you're in your ihram, having put on the izar, which is the lower garment, and the rida, which is the upper garment, or for ladies if they're putting on, if they wish to wear white clothing, it's good to wear white clothing. Or again, even if you're not wearing specific clothing for a woman, then it's about your intention, how you're coming to, in what state you're coming to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then you pray 2 rak'ahs. It's sunnah to pray 2 rak'ahs of ihram after having put the ihram on, and it'll depend on what time of day it is. If it's a time when prayer is disliked, then you wouldn't pray it, but if it's any other time, you can pray it. Even if you're on the plane, you can pray it sitting down. The Prophet ﷺ would pray his nafil, pray his extra prayer, sitting down on his camel or his whatever animal that he was riding, so you're sitting down, you can pray that the direction of the plane is your qibla. The direction of the plane is travelling is your qibla. So you can pray that 2 rak'ahs of ihram, and then that now comes the time when you actually make the intention for ihram. So you haven't actually entered into ihram yet, even though you're dressed in ihram, you prayed the 2 rak'ahs of ihram. You're not actually entering ihram until you make the intention. The intention comes after having prayed the 2 rak'ahs. After now you're heading to Mecca, basically. And the intention differs according to what kind of Hajj you're performing. We're not going to go too much into the details, but most likely you'll be making what's called tamattu', which means you're performing Umrah first, releasing yourself from ihram, and then going back into ihram for Hajj. Okay, that's most people are likely to do that. That you're coming, releasing yourself from, you're performing Umrah, you release yourself from ihram, then you go back into ihram just in time to perform the Hajj. So in that case you intend Umrah. You say you intend Umrah, نويت الأمرة متمتعا بها إلى الحج وحرمت بها لله تعالى. That's the intention. You don't have to say it in Arabic, but you don't even have to say it out loud. It's good to say it out loud to remind the heart, but the place of the intention is the heart. So you intend in your heart, I'm making ihram for Umrah with the purpose of then performing Hajj, and I've made this intention. And then you say nawaitu, then you say Allahumma labbaik Allahumma bi umrah, labbaik Allahumma bi umrah, labbaik Allahumma bi umrah, at your service, ever at your service, my Lord, by performing an umrah, ever at your service by performing an umrah. Allahumma inni uridu al-umrata fayassirha li, that I intend to make umrah and I ask you to make it easy for me. And all through our rites of Hajj, we should always asking for ease. Asking for ease. And at any point things can become difficult, ask for ease. And with any act of worship, even when we're fasting, when we're praying, ask for ease from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they also mention it's good beyond that to intend nawaitu ma nawa Rasulullah was salihun, that I intend what the Prophet ﷺ intended and what the pious servants of Allah intended. Beyond the minimum intention for the Umrah, there's other intentions that the Prophet ﷺ had, and other things that the pious had in their hearts when they made this. So we ask for that. If you can't think of it yourself, follow in their footsteps. Follow in their footsteps, and it's not just in ihram, but anything. So nawaitu ma nawa Rasulullah ﷺ, I intend what the Prophet ﷺ intended, and intend what the pious intend, because they have intentions beyond the intentions that you can imagine. So you can intend what they intend. And then we have what's called the talbiya labayk. We mentioned this briefly before, but now this is the time when it really starts. Labayk Allahumma labayk, labayk la sharika laka, labayk innal hamda wa ni'mata laka, wal mulka la sharika lak. This is, we're going to repeat in this beautiful announcement of coming to Allah. Labayk Allah, labayk, I am ever at your service. Labayk, I am ever at your service, O Allah. Ever at your service. You can again, every time you say labayk, you're saying at your service, ever at your service, constantly at your service, at your beck and call, Ya Allah, coming to you, Ya Allah. And then you say, you have no partner, ever at your service, all praise, blessings and dominion are yours, you have no partner. No problem. So this is sunnah to repeat this starting from now and all through your rites. So if you're going to perform Umrah first, up until you make your tawaf, and then when you go back into Ihram for Hajj, you're going to repeat it constantly up until the day of the 10th day, the day of slaughter. But more about that later. But when you say it again, it's not just something you just repeat over and over again, but you experience the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one you're saying, I'm coming to you. So have to be aware that this is the conversation you're having with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He's going to answer. You're hoping that He's going to answer your call. So you should have hope that He's going to answer your call. Hope that He's going to respond, and also an awe and a fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That perhaps He won't. Ya Allah, I need you to respond to me. And there's a famous story of Imam Ali Zayn al-Abidin, the son of Imam Hussein. When he went into his ihram, he went pale and fainted, and he said, and they said, what happened? He said, yeah, I was saying labbaik, and I began to say labbaik, and I feared that Allah would say la labbaika wa la sa'dik, that no, I'm not accepting you, I'm rejecting your coming to me. And of course, he was the last person that Allah would reject. But that's how the Salihin, the pious, have that immense fear and awareness of Allah's majesty, and no complacency, no kind of thinking that it's all good, I'm going to be accepted. But no, there's that fear. There's a story of a man who was standing 40 years saying labbaik, labbaik, and they said, what's going on? He said that every time I say labbaik, I hear la labbaik wa la sa'dik. I hear this response saying that no, you haven't been accepted. So he kept saying it until eventually he received that acceptance. They said, why did you stay so long? He said that there's no other way to Allah. There's no other door to Allah. It's only if he doesn't accept me, then no one else is going to accept me. So he just stood there saying labbaik, labbaik. Inshallah, we won't be in that situation, but there's still that awareness of what the pious experience. So don't just say it on your tongue, but experiencing the meaning, that you're constantly affirming that you're coming to Allah, you're His service, you're His servant, you're His slave. That your tongue, not your tongue says it, but you feel it in your heart, and you feel it in your ruh, in your soul, and in your mind, and your whole body. Everything about you is in a state of obedience and subservience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you get rid of your desires, you get rid of your following your caprice and so on, and you also intend to be entering into the talbiyah, the labbaik of those other pious who are making the Hajj with you. That it's not just you on your own, but labbaik Allahumma labbaik. If mine isn't accepted, then inshallah by the barakah, by the blessings of the group, that will be accepted. The immediate group around you, and the group of the whole waft, the whole delegation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all those who are making Hajj, all those who are making Hajj, and those who have made Hajj in the past. Because if Allah accepts one, and then then through His generosity, He's too generous not to accept the rest. He'll accept by the virtue of the one good person, or one pious person, through the piety of that person's heart, He'll accept the Hajj and the worship of everyone else. So you have that intention. So you come in a state of humility, you come in a state of happiness, that Allah's giving that tawfiq to Allah, to come to Him. Again, constantly witnessing. It's good also to add to the talbiyah other adhkar, to sweeten it. So you add some salah on the Prophet ﷺ. So you repeat the talbiyah 3 times, labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik Allahumma labbaik. Repeat it 3 times, and then add to that Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhab an-nar. Some extra du'a, so good. Then you can repeat the labbaik again, so you're constantly it's on rotation. And Imam al-Sha'rani, one of the great Imams who teaches us many kind of the subtleties and the etiquettes, he has a book called Al-Uhud al-Muhammadiyya, the covenants that he took with the Prophet ﷺ. And these covenants relate to kind of the fine points of the Sunnah and performance of actions and worship and so on. He mentions two covenants he took with the Prophet ﷺ. One is to come to Hajj in a state of humility, and not to, even in terms of your appearance and the way you come to Hajj, you do it in the most humble of ways. And the Prophet ﷺ, Anas notes, the Prophet ﷺ came Hajj al-Nabi ﷺ ala rahilin rathin wa qatifatin khaliqah. That he came, the Prophet ﷺ, on a the animal that he rode was not wasn't the finest of animals, and his kind of the cloth that he rode on was kind of shabby, it wasn't expensive. So even the way that he approached approached the ihram and the worship was in a state of humility. And he said, Allahumma hajjatun la riya'a fiha wa la sum'a. He said, the Prophet said, make it a hajj in which there's no showing off and no seeking of status. Okay, so there's nothing, none of that, don't allow any of that to creep in to my hajj and to ruin my hajj. And on his way to perform the hajj, the Prophet ﷺ, he kind of recalls some of the prophets of the past, how they made their hajj. And he was going through certain valleys. He says, the Prophet ﷺ passing through one of the valleys, and he said, as if I can see Musa alayhi salam, raising his voice, putting his hands in his ears and raising his voice with the talbiyah, with the labbaik. And he said this also about some of the other prophets. Kani andur ila Yunus. He said, and then again he passes through another valley, another area. He said, as if I can see Yunus alayhi salam on a red camel, wearing woolen clothing, and he raising his voice again with the talbiyah, with the labbaik. Okay, so remember, this is all the prophets have been on this path. This is a kind of reaffirmation of what they did. He said also, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he said that Hud and Salih passed by this place. He's seeing like history taking in action, if you like. He saw Hud and Salih alayhim salam. They passed by, on their camels, making on their way to make Hajj. And he said also, the second covenant he said we took is to raise our voice with this labbaik. So it's a sunnah to raise the voice. Okay, there's times when we raise our voices with dhikr. There's times when we pray our salah out loud. There's times when we pray our salah quietly. But this is the time when we raise our voices with the dhikr of the talbiyah, labbaik Allahumma labbaik. And someone asked the Prophet ﷺ that Man al-Hajj, who is the one who performs Hajj? Who is al-Hajj? The Hajj is, who's the one who performs Hajj? The Prophet ﷺ, al-Sha'ith al-Tafil. He said the one who's kind of disheveled and roughly dressed, if you like. Okay, dusty and disheveled. And then he said, Ayyul Hajju afdal. He said, which Hajj? What is the best part of Hajj, if you like? What is the embodiment of Hajj? He said, Al-Ajj wa Thajj. Al-Ajj wa Thajj. Look at how the Prophet ﷺ's language. Al-Ajj is raising the voice with the talbiyah, saying labbaik Allahumma labbaik. This is the kind of the essence of the Hajj. Is not just saying it, but meaning it and being it. Wa Thajj is slaughtering the offering, when you slaughter the animal for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Al-Ajj wa Thajj, he said that's the best, if you like, part of Hajj. So he said that the covenant he took was to raise his voice with the labbaik. So this is a constant feature of our Hajj. We're constantly in a state of dhikr, a state of remembrance of Allah, constantly reminding ourselves of the reality that we're coming to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he said sallallahu alaihi wasallam that whenever someone makes a talbiyah, and whenever someone says labbaik, lubbiya ma an yaminihi wa shimalihi min hajrin wa shajrin wa madrin hatta tanqati' al-ard min huna an yamini wa shimali. He said everything on your right and on your left. When you they say labbaik, everything on your right and your left says labbaik with you. the trees and the desert sands and the mountains and everything and the rocks, they all say labbaik with you until you finish. And he said, Jibreel came to me, alayhi salam, and ordered me to, he commanded me to command my companions to raise their voices with the labbaik, with the labbaik. So those are some of the etiquettes. This is how we come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, saying, I'm ever at your service, O Allah, I'm ever at your service. I'm in absolute need of you. Everything belongs to you. Every blessing, everything is in your power and your dominion. I come in absolute servitude to you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So ask Allah that we come in that state to Him, and we understand the true meanings of this, of the ihram and the talbiyah, and then we, inshallah, come to His house subhanahu wa ta'ala and come to worship Him and seek His pleasure and follow in the footsteps of His beloved sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and all the prophets and messengers alayhim as-salam. Walhamdulillah rabbil alamin.